this is Stephanie of Stephanie Stitches, bringing you the Fort Worth Fabric Studio Valentine Mystery Quilt. So this is love. So this is love. I had to do it. I was so excited when I heard that name, and that song's been playing in my head for a while now. So I'm super excited to be sewing with you guys today. I did sew up one of each block so I could give you a preview of what they're going to look like. And so I knew what I was doing when I showed you guys. So behind me is what you'll see is what we're sewing today. We're sewing X's and O's, hugs and kisses. That's so sweet. So we're going to make 2 of each of these blocks. And if you give me just a second, I will move the camera and point it down towards the project. And so, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to leave it pointed there the entire time so you can watch me sew, iron, mark the blocks, whatever we need to do, and then I'll move it back up at the end. So stay tuned, and I hope you keep watching and sew along with me and enjoy. See you in a bit. Okay, so let's get started sewing these blocks. So a few things I wanted to point out before we get actually into sewing. These fabrics have high contrast. We have black and we have white. So I wanted to show you threads, and typically I piece mostly with white, but if you look at the white against the black, it's gonna stand out. And you can use white, that's not a problem, but if your seam or not your seam allowance, but your stitches aren't small enough, you may see the white through the front. Same thing with the black, because black is another choice you can make, because obviously it disappears on the black, but it may show through the white. So I decided not to go with either black or white. I decided to go with gray. This Dove Gray from Aurifil is one of my favorite colors when I need something to blend, because the dove seems to melt right into white and it doesn't stand out as much on the black. It's still going to stand out some, but it doesn't stand out as much as what the white would. My other tip is to lower your stitch length. Most quilters usually stitch with a 2.0, 2.2 stitch length. I lower mine down to a 1.6 or a 1.8 when I'm doing things that I don't want the thread to show through, because the smaller your stitches, the less your thread's going to show. Like these blocks that we're going to make, we're going to be sewing these squares on and flipping them, so you may see threads along the edge. So the smaller your stitch length, the less your thread is going to show. So there's a tip for you. So I'm going with the Dove Gray. Wanted to show you that. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about was we're putting these blocks together by adding a square on each corner. Now, when we add the squares on each corner, you're going to want to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other. Usually when I do blocks that require squares in the corner, or stitch and flip, it's called snowballing blocks, there's different terms for it. But I don't usually mark blocks this small. I like this diagonal seam tape from Quilt Sew, which Fort Worth Fabric Studios does sell on their website. As you can see here, I have it on my machine. The red line in the center lines up with your needle, and then you've got a 1/4 inch, the black lines are a 1/4 inch seam allowance on either side. So I like to use this. So I usually don't mark small blocks like this, but I did want to show you in case you do want to mark. Typically if I do mark, which a larger block like this one, if this were the one we were sewing, I would mark this because you can't see the whole block. Like when you're sewing, you can't see the start and end on the tape. So I would mark one like this. So typically I would use a friction pen. That's my favorite tool for marking. There's people who like friction pens, chalk pens, water soluble pens. I don't think a lot is going to show up on this black though. A chalk pen probably would. Chalk is not my favorite because it's super messy. But there's a lot of people who love chalk. So if that's the way you want to do it, that's the way you want to do it. But pencil will show up. So I got this mechanical pencil and I wanted to show you guys. So if you have a ruler that has a 45-degree angle marking like this one does, if you guys can see that line, you can put this ruler, that 45-degree line right there, on the bottom edge of your block. line that up on the bottom edge, and it'll give you that corner to corner measurement that you want. So then you can mark it with a pencil. I'm going to go over this just a little bit. Okay? And then you can actually see the pencil. You wouldn't be able to see a friction pen because it's black, but you can see the pencil. So if you need to draw lines, I suggest a pencil for this. So I'm going to go ahead and put these blocks on here, and I'm going to pin these. Now normally I wouldn't pin blocks either, but I've been quilting for a long time, and I'm going to pin these because I know we've got a lot of new beginners with us, because I just wanted to show you how the best way to do it is that I feel for a beginner. So these guys don't move, and you can get them as precise as possible. So we're putting one 2.5 inch square on either side, so opposite ends of our 4.5 inch square. And you're going to do this for all the colors for pieces B, C, D, and E. You're going to put one square opposite sides. So I've already pinned all of mine, so we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to put my pencil away. Now I didn't mark all of these, I just marked the one to show you. Like I said, I follow my tape, but you guys are welcome to mark all of them, of course. And so I'm just going to chain piece all of these. Chain piecing is just a quilting term that means I'm going to take one right after the other. I'm not going to break my thread, and I'm just going to keep sewing. You'll see they make a big chain at the end on one side, and then I'm going to take those off, cut them all apart, and do the same thing on the other. So you just lift your presser foot slightly, put your next piece under there, and keep going. If you have a needle up-down feature on your machine, I would suggest putting the needle down. Okay, so this is why it's called chain piecing. Once you've got them all sewed, they're all together like a chain. So we're just going to take a little pair of snips, which I have got a magnet on the front of my machine that I keep my snips on. That way they're easily accessible. And I'm going to snip these all apart, being careful not to stab myself with a pin. I really do not like pinning, but I wanted to show you all how I think is best to do these. Now, if you have a better way, don't feel like you have to do it my way. You definitely do not. That's a fun thing about quilting. There's lots of ways to do things. And sometimes you can find the best way through trial and error on your own. Everything I tell you is just a suggestion, and just things that I found that work. Okay, now I'm going to start on the other side. You could press these if you want to, but since they don't overlap and I'm not going to sew over this piece, I'm just going to wait and press everything all at the end, because I feel like the more you can do the same all at once, the less time it takes. And my pins aren't going under the needle, they're next to it, so there's no worries there. I pinned far enough out on these blocks that I'm not sewing over them. I'm going to take all the pins out and then cut them apart again. Okay. Now I'm going to take my rotary cutter and a small ruler, and I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away from the line we just sewed. So here's the line we sewed. We're going to cut a 1/4 inch out towards the corner away from that line. So that's what it should look like. You should still see the line on the outside corner. You're taking that off. Make sure you don't go on the inside corner, because then you're going to have to figure out if you have enough scraps to make another block. We're just going to cut all these away. So far so good, right? Not too bad. Now, it's helpful if you've got an iron that you can put right near your sewing table. But if you don't, that's okay. You'll definitely need to iron these though after this step, so have an iron ready to go. If all you have is one big iron on your ironing board, that's perfectly fine. I'm lucky and blessed enough to be able to have a big iron and then a little mini iron next to my sewing space. So I can show you how to do this. Okay. These are fun and quick and easy blocks. We are halfway done already. Okay, we're going to get rid of that. Now, I'm going to put my cutting stuff aside for a minute. Bring my I've got this little mini ironing board that I bought on vacation in Amish country quite a while ago. I just love it. So I'm going to set my seam and then flip this out and press this. So we're going to make the block look square again. And I accomplished what I wanted by lowering my stitch length and using the gray thread. I barely see the threads, so that's good news. Set that seam, and setting the seam just means we're ironing that down in place, and it helps close the holes that you made with the needle when you sewed it. This is called the stitch and flip method if you're newer to quilting. This is also called snowballing corners. There's lots of names for all these things, and don't worry, you don't have to know them all now. You'll learn them as you go. Now I did, as mentioned in the cutting video, I did best press my fabric, so that does help with the pieces going into place. If you do not start or best press, that's okay. It just may be a little bit harder to get them flat, but you can do it. Just you'll have to press a little bit longer. Oh, these are so cute. Now after I get these all pressed, we are going to take the ruler and the rotary cutter and we are going to trim these to 4.5 inches if they are not 4.5 inches already. Sometimes when you add the squares on the corner, they can get a little wonky, or the squares maybe you were one thread over, so they can be a little bit too big. So we're just going to make sure that they're all nice and square to 4.5 inches. The square you can have your pieces before you put them together in the whole block, the better your block is going to come out. Okay, so I'm going to put my iron aside and I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to check the sizes. So that one's pretty good. That one's good. I have a 4.5 inch ruler here. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can use whatever ruler you have, as long as it's bigger than 4.5 inches. So far, so good. Alrighty, these are set. So now, put these strips out of the way. I'm going to arrange these according to the diagram. So it looks like little hearts here for the X block go up in the right hand corner. And for the O block the same, but it's turned in. So definitely follow your diagram for this. The white with the little heart flowers is going to go in the top left. Let me do this one over here. I like to lay things out before I start sewing. So that's going to go there. The circle hearts are going to go there, and that one's going to go out. And the red hearts with the red with the pink hearts, yep, go like that to make the O, and like that to make the X. How cute! Isn't that neat how you turn the blocks a different, or these blocks a different way, and it makes a whole different block? That's pretty cool. So we're gonna make 2 X's and 2, or you guys are gonna make 2 X's and 2 O's. I already made one of each and showed you at the beginning. So I'm gonna show you now. So I'm gonna keep these in, I'm gonna do these in rows so I can keep them in order. So I'm gonna grab the first row first, or the top row first. Now, this is where it's nice to have a little mini iron next to your machine if you can have one, or if you have your big iron, that'll work too. But a little pressing mat next to your machine too, that's helpful. Because before we put these rows together, we are going to press these blocks because the directions say to press open. And when I did the first 2, I did press them open and they laid really nicely, and they would have been very bulky if I didn't press them open. And if you don't know what that means, I will show you. We have some brand new quilters this time around, and I'm really excited about that because this is a perfect starter project for a brand new quilter. It's very, very beginner friendly. The directions are nice and clear, and the blocks are really easy. Okay, so I've got the rows sewn together. Now I'm going to press these before we move on. So I'm going to move this guy over here, and I'm going to bring my iron back. And we're going to press these open. So the easiest way, if you don't, there's lots and lots of tools you can use to press open. There's pressing sticks, all kinds of things. But the best way, especially if you're a beginner and you don't have all the fancy tools, which you don't need, is to start by setting your seam. Open your block back up and press it to the side. Now, traditionally when you make blocks, you press one row to the left and one row to the right. So when you put the rows together, those seams go opposite directions and kind of fit like a puzzle. So when you sew them, you can get those seams to intersect very nicely. But this, because it's going to get bulky, we need to press it open. So I pressed it to the side. You can see it's over this direction. So now what I'm going to do is take my finger and open that up. Don't burn your finger. Press it right down the middle, and you can see the seam is now open. So I always press it on that side and on the front side. That just helps it stay where you want it to be. So there you go, nice and pressed open. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with the next row. We're going to set the seam. Press it to the side. Flip it over, and it'll be warm from pressing to the side, so be careful with your fingers. And press it open. So that one's pressed open. So I'm going to do the same thing with the X block. Set the seam, press it to the side. Press open. Set the seam, press it to the side, and then press open. Okay, those are nice and pressed. Set the iron back to the side. Now, normally, like I said, when you quilt, you typically will iron one this direction and one this direction. So those seams, when you bring them together, will fit together like a puzzle. But these aren't. So typically I do not pin when I put blocks together. But because these are open, there's nothing to tell me when I'm sewing if those seams are nice and tight together in the middle. So I'm going to put a pin right there, because I don't want this guy to move. And I want the nice, the blocks to come together nicely in the center. And it can be a little hard to see because it's black. But I'm going to stick it right through the seam there. Right through the center seam. And come back through the other side. And just to keep those blocks together nicely, I'm going to pin right where these seams are too. Okay, that one's good. I'm going to pin this one while we're at it, so I can just sew both of these. This one's going to be a little easier to see because we have colored fabric instead of black. Black is definitely one of the harder things for me to see. I'm going to pin right there through the seams, just to keep those blocks in the right spot. I love it if we open this up and all the seams match like they're supposed to. Okay, now we're going to take this into a 1/4 inch down the center section here. And if I didn't mention that at the beginning, I should have. We're definitely using a 1/4 inch seam for this entire project. That's another nice thing about this diagonal seam tape, is it's got the 1/4 inch line, so if you're newer to sewing and you haven't mastered that 1/4 inch line yet, or that 1/4 inch seam, this tape is a wonderful guide. Put that aside. I'm going to sew this one. Oh. Take the pins out, and we're going to open this and pray. Yes, they matched up. Very nice. See about this one. Yes, it matched up right. You can see those intersections came out really nicely, so I'm pretty happy about that. It's always nice when your intersections come out good. So I'm going to do the same thing with this as I just did before when we pressed. I'm going to do my seams open. So I'm going to set the seam. Give everything else a little press again. Press to the side. This just helps it getting at least going in one direction, and then it's pretty easy to open after that. And then open up that seam. If you're having a hard time getting it to open, if you don't starch or best press or whatever you do to your fabric ahead of time, you could use a little bit of water. Let me help. Just not too much because it might stretch your fabric out. Okay, so we have an X block. Yay, that came out good. Happy about that. Set the seam. Press to the side. Oh, I'm very happy with my thread choice. I can barely see the thread. So that's awesome on the front. Okay. Got that guy pressed. Yeah, this would be very, very, very bulky if we didn't press these seams open, because you'd have one to the side here, one to the side here. It'd be quite a mess. So there you go. There's the O block. And as you can see, I've pressed everything open on the back. So that one's good to go. I'm going to put my iron to the side. Now, reorient these. We're going to add the strips. So we're going to put these 8.5 inch strips, one on each side, left and right, of our block. And you may want to pin these. I am not going to. I'm just going to, well, maybe I will. I will pin these so I can show you guys. I was going to wing it, but I will pin for you guys. If you've watched my channel at all, you know that pinning is not my favorite thing. So you know how much I love you if I'm pinning for you. Okay. Got that one pinned. Okay. Pin this one. And working on the next block. We're going to pin this one again to the right and to the left. Okay, now we've got those pinned. I take them to my sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch on each side. Flip them around. those are done. After I'm done sewing this one, we'll press all those out towards the outside of our block. Let's see here, I lost my bobbin. There we go. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Flip it around. Oh. Well, my goodness. My machine's saying no more sewing for today. Sorry about that. Give me a second. Machine came unthreaded. It happens. I've been running her a lot lately and she's ready for a spa day, so. My machine does have a needle threader, but I will confess that as long as I've had this machine, I still can't figure out how to use it. So I have to thread from doing it the old-fashioned way. All right, there we go. Now we should be in business. Yep. All right. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna trim these excess threads off. Alright, now I'm going to bring my iron back over and I'm going to set the seam and press these out. And then we're going to put the top and bottom border on and then we'll be done with this week's blocks. So these are quick and easy and very cute. I am super excited to see what the rest of this quilt is going to look like and put this rest of this together with you guys. Now, like I said at the beginning, I've already made 2 to show you an example of what we were making. So don't forget, you're not just making 1 of each X and O, you're making 2. So you're going to have 4 blocks all together when you're done this week. Alright, now for the top and bottom. And I'm not going to pin this time, I'm just going to go. if you have any questions along the way, if you get stuck, leave a comment underneath the video and I'm happy to help you. Or you can go to if you're on Facebook, you can go to the Fort Worth Fabric Studio So This Is Love Facebook page. And if you're not already a member of the group, you can become a member of the group. And there's a lovely moderator there who is happy to answer questions. There's lots of lovely sewing ladies there that will be happy to answer your questions too. But I will definitely be watching comments, so if you need any help, don't hesitate. I know we have a lot of brand new quilters. I had several, I don't want to say several, but probably at least 4, maybe 5 ladies say to me, email me and said, this is my first quilt. So yay, that's amazing that you're working on your first quilt, and I'm so happy that we're sewing together. But I know that you're probably going to have questions, because I surely did when I did my first quilt. So if you do have any questions, make sure you put it in the comment box below the video. So this is what your X block is going to come out to. And let me press the O block. And we're nearly there. Super excited. Okay. Weren't these cute and fun? Just love them. I cannot wait to see what this whole quilt looks like. It's going to be just adorable. I knew it would be based on the name. It was so fun when she called it So This Is Love. It made me sing the song and be goofy, but that's okay. All right, so there's our blocks. And I'm going to move the camera and be right with you. So hold on just for a minute. So that was so much fun. There's our blocks behind me. That 2 X's and 2 O's. This was week 1, and I hope you come back next Monday and join me on January 22nd for week 2, so we can keep going on this cute little quilt. And like I said earlier, if you need any help, I am more than happy to help you. Just put your comment below, or you can always email me. My email is in the description box below, or you can join the Fort Worth Fabric Studio Facebook group specifically for this quilt and ask any of the quilting ladies there. I'm sure they would be happy to help you. There's a wonderful community here and lots of people who are willing to help. So thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great week, and looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.